To 26 people, 18 of them children, have been killed in a school shooting in Connecticut, in the United States. There's been no official confirmation of numbers, with the police saying within the last half hour that a lone gunman is dead inside the school and that the scene has been secured. The incident began at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, northeast of New York City, just after 9:40 this morning. As the news spread, other schools in the immediate area were put into lockdown. Let's go live now to Matt Fry in Washington. Matt.
Well, John, the details are emerging every minute, and the picture that's being built up is one of a shooter going into the school, a primary school, so as you said, children between 5 and 10, at assembly time, so around about 9 o'clock this morning, and then shooting at dozens of people. Now, we don't know who the shooter was. We don't know why he did this. What we do know is that this is the largest number of school children ever killed in a school massacre. We also know that, according to the police, that on-duty and off-duty troopers were rushed to the scene immediately. The shooter was then dead inside the building. Whether he was shot dead by the police or whether he shot himself, we don't know that yet. And we also know that the president was informed at 10:30 about this. And it's interesting, when Jay Carney, the spokesman, gave his daily briefing, he started off with this event, which is particularly poignant. And one brief detail, as we saw aerial pictures, and as you always do, of this particular scene, there was one thing missing, and that was ambulances. Now, that can mean one of two things. Either there are no fatalities, or there are so many fatalities that there's no point in sending them in, and the whole thing has been locked down as a crime scene. Friday morning before the Christmas holidays at the Sandy Hook Primary School in suburban Connecticut. You can just imagine the scene inside the building. Christmas decorations, a festive atmosphere. But what you cannot imagine is what caused these children to be evacuated.
When we were gone doing morning meeting, we heard like shots and everybody went on the ground, and Miss Martin just closed the door and we went to the corner.
And we found out because there was like right near the window in our classroom, and like we saw like police officers and we heard them on the roof and in our building.
Was everybody crying, scared, wanting their parents to come get them?
Yeah, they were, and then some people were even like they kind of felt they got a stomach ache.
I was in the gym and I heard I heard like 7 loud booms, and the gym teachers told us to go in the corner. So we all huddled, and I kept hearing these booming noises.
We just ran like every other parent, and we found out we couldn't get to the school. But, fortunately, the fire department, Sandy Hook Fire Department's nearby. They shuttled everyone in, including the kids, into the side door of the firehouse.
The apparent calm of the parents leading away their children belies the horror of what has just happened. We now know that at least 18 children were shot dead, as well as 8 adults. We also know from police officials that the shooter was a 20-year-old man armed with 2 handguns. And we now know that this is the worst school shooting in US history, the worst of 9 in the last 13 years, much worse even than the Columbine massacre, in which 13 people were killed. At the White House, spokesman Jay Carney started his daily briefing with the news. At this stage, he gave away very few details, but his face spoke volumes.
I think it's important on a day like today to view this as I know the president as a father does, and I as a father, and others who are parents certainly do, which is to feel enormous sympathy for families that are affected, and to do everything we can to support state and local law enforcement and to support those who are enduring what appears to be a very tragic event.
There are so many details still emerging, but in the tragically long annals of American school shootings, a new horrific low has now been reached: the massacre of children. But is even this enough to change the gun laws in this country? Don't bet on it.
And once the appalling atrocity sinks in terms of slaughtering of children, that question about gun control rings loud across the world. People must wonder, surely this will change things.
Well, they're right to wonder, and they're right to doubt that something will change. You know, it was really interesting, John, that even during today's press briefing, before the horror of this had sunk in, Jay Carney, the spokesman, was asked about gun control, and he said, "I don't want to talk about that today. That is not an issue that we want to discuss before we know all the details of this." Now, the president is on the record during his campaign for having said repeatedly that he wants a ban on assault weapons. But this wasn't an assault weapon, if the police is right. This was a handgun. These things are easier to buy than, well, almost as easy to buy as candy, unless you have a particularly obvious record that the computers can access. So the real question, John, is does this constitute the red line that advocates of gun control have talked about repeatedly, and that despite every bad massacre never seems to materialize?
Well, the other thing is, watching American correspondents reporting this story, they report as commonplace that immediately local schools were in lockdown, as if these poor kids go to school as a normality, with a lockdown as part of their procedures in case of emergency.
Well, I'll tell you something. The high school, almost at the end of my road in Washington, D.C., has metal detectors in front of every door. Now, that's for knives, but it's also for guns. But, John, that's a high school. You don't have the same kind of security at primary schools, but I bet you what, you're going to see metal detectors at primary schools as well. School shootings, of which there have been 9 in the last 13 years, are now so commonplace that these procedures have been put in place. Shootings in shopping malls, I mean, in public places. There was one in Oregon just a few days ago in which 3 people were killed. Really just run-of-the-mill stuff. The question is, as people get used to these massacres, what can be enacted in terms of policy to make them go away, to make it more difficult for ordinary people who have hidden grudges to buy a weapon and then use it in anger?
Matt Fry, I will be returning to him and the events in Connecticut later in the programme.